And I'm going to make Mary Thatcher our presenter, and Mary can take it away.
Okay, thank you, Beth, and thank you, everyone, for spending your late Friday afternoon with us. I really appreciate that. Yesterday, when we did this webinar, or the Thursday version of this webinar, we were having this huge windy storm here, and I thought I was going to lose electricity, but everything went fine, and it's much calmer today, so hopefully everything will go smoothly today, too. Um, we're a lot of thinking and contributing in this webinar, so whoops, slides. So get your fingers and your brains ready to participate. The agenda looks small. It's small but mighty. So we're going to do three things. We're going to revisit the behavior checklist for mentors that we talked about in our training in February and that you did an online version of. Then we're going to go to analyzing student assignments. That'll be the bulk of our hour together, and then at the end we'll just talk about what the next steps are. Right to the behavior checklist. Do you remember that document that you were looking at together on February? There were three categories to it. The first one being an active learner. The second one was about supporting personal developments for the teachers that you're coaching. And the third one was about communicating effectively. You to do this, to rate yourself on each item on there online. So this is what the form like online to jog your memory. So hopefully that looks familiar to you when you filled it out online. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the results of that right now. So here's the scale that you were given to rate yourself. So 1 is, I'm not good at this, I really need to work on this. And I can tell you there was hardly any 1s. Of all the, it was about 40 people that responded. There was maybe 1 or 2 1s. I'm okay at this, but I could be better. So there were a lot of 3s. So I sort of collected 1s, 2s, and 3s together. And then 4s and 5s. 5 is I do this and I could help others learn to do this better. So 5 is I got this and I can coach others. So this, and here's how I color coded it. So our need help in white and blue are I got this. So this is your results. I know you can't read this, and you can't, so it's not going to really mean anything to you as far as actually the items, but it's arranged. So if you look at the top row that has green, orange, purple, green, green, purple, purple, you can see down at the bottom that that's the categories. So orange is active listening, purple is supporting teachers in professional development, and green is communication. And it goes from need most help to need the least help, or I've got this. So if you just look at the first 5, looking at top row, on the left, green, orange, purple, green, green, those, just the many. You see a lot of yellow and orange. If you just kind of squint your eyes and blur your vision and just look at it as sort of like as Patrick would say, a Jackson Pollock painting, you see a lot more yellow and orange on this end. When you look to the right end, you see on the orange, orange, green, orange, purple, you see a lot more blue and white. So you can see that there aren't really clusters or anything, but in general, we felt more comfortable with the 5 on the right end and less comfortable with these 5 on the left end. So looking at the categories, what category would you say that we as a group feel most comfortable in? Just type that in the chat, looking at those 5 on the right. What category looks most comfortable? Sure you're to everyone. Yeah, you don't look at the colors. So orange is active listener, purple is support your growth. Can you see those on the bottom? And green is communication. So these five on the right, support your growth is purple. So the one you feel the most comfortable with is related to support to your growth. But orange is here on the right. So what orange? Category is down here at the bottom, active listening. Thank you, Janet. So you comfortable in the active listening category. So I'm not going to try to make you look at that tiny stuff anymore. Let's look at the highest rated items. The first one is I'm open to feedback and I have another typo in there. I can't believe it. I'm open to feedback and willing to adapt as needed. That's a good quality to have in adult education, isn't it? Really any profession. Recognize and honor different communication styles. And I would say we are all about diversity and equity in adult education, so we certainly need to be tuned into different communication styles. I listen full attention and I'm able to read verbal and nonverbal cues. That means you're really tuning into your students and knowing when they're connecting with you and when they're drifting off, and I'm sure you all do that. And you're doing that with your teachers as well when you're coaching. The next, high expectations for my teachers and recognize and build on their strengths. So that's another thing I'm sure you do with your students, and you're doing it with your teachers as well. And the last one, I can articulate the art of teaching. It's great. That's one of the ones I would have rated myself lower on. I think it's really hard to articulate the part that's really the art that you have to sort of intuit as you're going along. So I'm glad that you as a group feel comfortable with that one. Okay, so I'm over to where the lowest rated ones are the ones that people felt like they could use some help with. And the biggest one was I probed for specificity, clarity, elaboration, and precision, so that teachers learn to reflect on their practice and learn to better articulate their thinking and reasoning. And that is really a challenging one, and it's asking for a lot of really focused interaction with your teachers. The next one, I established goals with my teachers for our partnership. That has to do with active learning, and then I help my teachers establish goals for themselves. So 2 about goal setting. The open-ended questions to elicit thinking and ask follow-up questions to clarify understanding and to demonstrate genuine interest. So under communication 1, and my own assumptions and find out whether my interpretations and perceptions are valid and accurate. So you might be giving an interpretation of something that happened in the classroom to the teacher, and then you might say, I was assuming that you were going for this. Is that right? Or were you thinking something else? So just checking the reality check with people when you're working with them. So the thing I'm happy about when I was looking at these, the ones that we most need to work on, are that this fits really well with analyzing student assignments, because it's going to give you a path, a very defined path, like a very specific process with your teachers that will give you an opportunity to focus in with specificity and clarity about what the questions are and what the challenges are, elaboration on how you're going to address a particular student assignment, and precision in talking about that assignment. So hopefully all of these other things will be built into this also, so you'll have a chance at the end of this to see if you think we did that or not. Looking at these 5 items that are sort of came out as the ones that need the most attention, how does that fit with your perception of your own work? Do you identify with these, or not so much, and there are other ones that you feel like you would identify with more? or maybe you feel like you've got a communication thing done and the mentoring activities down and you don't really need to work at. Looking at this relate to your work. Okay, there's a lot there, so goal seems to be the hardest for me to incorporate into my interaction with teachers. Thanks, Janet. Yeah, I noticed that we did talk a lot about that, and we talked about having kind of a form that you could do with the teacher to set a goal, but that's still a challenge. Capacity building using all those strategies. Irene, thank you. Liz, this is challenging for me. Me too, I'm with you on that. I have another typo. Okay, maybe put a chat or email it to me. I can't just. Oh, you had one. All right. I figured it was me. I've had so many of them. I figured them from yesterday. Okay, thank you so much. Following up on goals set earlier. Good. Yes, setting the goals is one thing, isn't it, Janet? And then following up on them is a whole other story. And that's the whole point of setting goals, is that you got to follow up on them. Probing for specificity is the hardest. Open-ended questions. Check your sometimes, but it leads to discussion. Yes, it does lead to some good conversations. And it's just a skill, that we just need to practice. We need to strengthen those muscles. Okay, so we're going to go on to looking at student assignments. And this is actually a process in I forgot what this was called. Okay. What it was called, but anyway, this document, this title page should look familiar to you. Innovations in Standard-Based Learning, Standard in Action. Thank you. That just left my brain for a minute. Thank you, guys. So you had an assignment to do a reading from that document, and it was just a few pages long, 4 or 5 pages long, I think, and that was posted in the COP and in February. So I'm just going to ask you, we're going to have an anonymous poll, but it was signed quite a while ago. What was this? Well, the pre-webinar for this one was, that was the end of January. So yes, that might feel like a long time ago. But we assigned this on February 3rd, and then it was posted in the COP. So my question is, I don't have an anonymous poll for you, so I'm just going to have you do this. If you read it, type a 1 in the chat. If you skimmed it, but you didn't really delve into it, type a 2. And if you just didn't have time to get to it, type a 3. And I'm looking at your names. I'm not looking at names. I just want to get an idea if I need to review a lot of what's in there, or that you sort of got this. Okay, so I see a mixture. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, you skimmed it. 3, you didn't get to it.
Remember, a bunch of you are sending it privately. Got privately a 2, another one, 3 through 2, a 2.
Okay, good. I got the idea. There's some 1s, but we have a lot of 2s and 3s. So I'm just not going to assume that you know everything that's in that reading. So those of you who did read or skim it, any reactions to that reading on the top of your head? Did the process make sense to you? Did it seem like something you could do with a few teachers? And what is a teacher or a group of teachers that you're working with, have each of them do an assignment with students and then present that assignment to the little group. And the little group might just be you and one person. But ideally, I think it works better if you have maybe 3 or 4 people in your group, and they look at how the students did and think about what that means. So we're going to go through the whole process right now. Just looking, it's telling me it made sense. That's good. It'd be great. I had time to do it for each assignment. Yeah, it would be great. I mean, this is something that you might get to do, once or twice in a semester, probably the way our time is. But it's a really fruitful process, I think. You think it's doable? Done. Thanks. That was definitely one of my questions, because it does take time, and you have to meet and do it, and then you have to meet again to follow up, just like with the goal setting. So thanks for your responses to that. Now, I was going to ask you before that, I was going to just look at the steps. So those are the 5 steps in this process of student assignments. The first step is introduce and determine the purpose of the assignment. So the teacher, this was what I was teaching, and this is my assignment, and this is why I did it. This is what I feel what I was trying to get at. Step 2 is analyze the demands of the assignment without consulting the standards. So just looking at the assignment, we're going to unpack the assignments just like we did the standards. So we're going to look at the skills, the concepts, and the context. So what do you have to know, and what do you have to be able to do to be successful in this assignment? Denise, they presented it to our pilot group. That's awesome. Okay, making a note about that, because that's a really nice thing to present in one of the upcoming webinars. That is so true, isn't it? Okay, so analyze the demands, and then after you've done that, compare to the standards, and if this assignment fits with one of the standards or one or more, probably more. If not, go on a different path. The next step after that is to diagnose student work. So actually look at the papers. They bring in the papers that their students hand in, and you look at them and you think about, what did they get? What did they miss? What does it mean? What do we need to do next? And so then the last step is read up and redesign the assignment. So if they really didn't get it, maybe you need to reteach or redesign the assignment. Maybe it was a problem with the assignment, or maybe it was a problem with the teaching that went into the assignment. If they did get it, maybe you need to, the next step is going to be a more rigorous approach to the same concept, maybe. So that's what that's about. Okay. Did the reading or know about this already? Our little 3-question quiz. The first question is, why start with the assignment rather than with the standard? What about that? Look at the student work. Okay, thanks. The assignment rather than starting with the standard. Judy, you're right. You're tracking, yes. Thank you, Janet. Thank you for your frankness. So you're right. So the thing is, you want to start where the teacher is. You want to start not with coming with something like, right, we're going to teach to this standard, but what are you doing now? What's your assignment now? Let's look at it and see how it's going. And then as part of that, we'll look at the standards, but that's not where you start from, because you want to start with something that they're already doing, and that's what they relate to. It's just, I don't know if any of you were in the a linked webinar earlier today about teaching academic writing, but they did all this research and all this background and all this information, and then the teachers were like, I don't want all that. We want to know what to do in the classroom right now. So this, starting with the assignment that you're doing right now, is very, very practical for the teacher. Next, who would explain the purpose of the assignment? if you visit this, doing this with a teacher or a small group of teachers, who is going to explain the purpose of the assignment? That's right, the teacher who taught it. They're going to come and present their assignment. Thank you. Next one, what should you do if the assignment is not aligned to the standards? In other words, if somebody's teaching a great lesson, but they're kind of out there in left field and it's not in any way related to any of the standards that are defining our curriculum, um, if you remember. Just with a smile, thank you. Yes, we're going to skip what they did with that work, because whatever they did, it's not going in the direction that we want to go anyway. So you don't need to spend a lot of time on that. Then you go to looking at the assignment and saying, okay, how can we make this really more closely related to our curriculum? Revise to stay in our lane, yes. We could have the lesson could be modified exactly. Revise assignment exactly. So you're good. Even if you didn't read it, you got this. Visualization of the steps, and we're just going to walk through each one of these 5 steps right now. As we're doing this, you're going to be hearing my voice a lot, and I'm going to be reading your contributions in the chat, and thank you. I really appreciate how active you all are being, and I hope you can hang there until 5 o'clock. Doing this with the teachers, there's not going to be as much of you talking. You're going to be doing this process with them and sort of leading them, asking them explicit questions so that to help them focus on what they're doing, and they're going to really come up with the answers. Thanks, Angela. So I asked a couple of people in February. I just buttonholed a couple of people and asked them if they could give me some examples of student assignments. And Mike Science and Connie Marshall were very gracious to do that. And I really appreciate that, because looking at real examples from real students rather than something that I make up and doesn't really fit the situation. So contributed this from Socorro Community Education in El Paso, and I'm just going to find it so I can tell you a little bit about his class. His is a transition class, a transition to college class. All of the students have professional degrees from other countries. Among them are teachers, a lawyer, international relations, software engineers, nurses, and accountants, to name a few. Okay, so that's the type of class it is. They were working on summarizing skills. So the assignment was right out of a book, and I should have written the name of the book, but I didn't do that. So they read a 6-paragraph passage, and then they answer some multiple choice questions that are focused on summarizing and some related skills. And I'm going to go back to here for a minute, and I'm going to do my standard disclaimer, which is ask both Mike and Connie to send me examples of something that students had a hard time with, so we would sort of have some meat to work with. So they both did that, and they did it in different ways, but they're both very experienced, excellent teachers, and they when doing that the way they did it for this normally. So this is no reflection on either of their teaching. This is just an example they provided for this process. Okay, so take a minute and read this paragraph. Question that was based on that paragraph. Which sentence best summarizes the results of the study? Just looking at that paragraph in this question, we want to determine what the demands of the assignment. we're going to look at skills, concepts, and context. So I think if I go over here, if you can see that, is that too small? If you can see that, then you can look at the paragraph and the question at the same time. It's visible. Okay, good, thanks. So looking, what would you say are the skills? The skills. What are things that the students need to be able to do to answer this question correctly? Inference, main idea. And summarize and main idea. Okay. And so analyze is in there too. You're right. All right. Let me go back to my slides, and I'll just tell you what I thought, which was I was much leap thinker than you are. I said summarize. Basically, the skill is summarize. What were the concepts? Question: what concepts do they have to understand? Good. The concepts are really similar, aren't they? The concept of main idea, the concept of what does summarize mean. They have to understand the vocabulary before they can do the work. Passage, yeah. So they have to understand what it is they're reading. Here's what I said for concepts. I said, so they're reading information and then they're have to summarize that information. And for context, I just said it's a text, something that we're reading. That's basically it. Actually, informational passage or reading for information. What should have said that? That sounds much better than just saying text. So thank you, Irene. Paragraph. Let's see, how am I doing for time? Skip this one, but you get the idea. So this is another paragraph, and then another based on that paragraph. And the question is, what sentence best states the main idea of paragraph 5? So for that one, the skill would be identify. A concept would be main idea. So they have to know what the main idea is and have to be able to identify it. That's the skills in the concept. And the context is informational text. Just imagine that I said that. Okay, so that was step 2, analyzing, what did we call it? Analyzing demands of the assignment. So I want to say also about these pictures. Mike also sent me these pictures. So these are the actual students that were actually doing this assignment, whose work we're going to look at in a minute. So now we're up to step 3. 3 is compare assignment to standards. So if you're sitting with your teachers, you're going to have your standards, your copy of the standards with you, and you're going to look at them. And if you haven't already done this, or if it isn't already on their lesson plan or something, and say, what standard are we teaching to here? But since doing this in a webinar, I just picked 3 for you to look at and pick from. There, I listed them A, B, and C. So go ahead and look at these and just type in the chat A, B, or C. What do you think? Wow, it's just maybe. The last group, there were a lot of B's and there are also some A and B's. And it doesn't have to be just one. I'll show you that I picked B also, and it kind of jumps out at you because it actually has the word summarize in it. But it certainly could be A too, couldn't it? Identify explicit and implicit textual information, including main idea, supporting evidence, and the author's purpose. So we're not doing all 3 of those things, but we definitely are looking for the main idea. So, but since this focuses on summarizing, 1.2.f.2 is probably the best fit. So I agree with you. So we know what the assignment is. We know what the students need to know and do. We know what standard is addressed. Now we're we're going to look at the actual student work. So, and here there were there were 4 items, starting with number 3. So here's the number that were wrong, that students got wrong. Boy, if I don't give that little arrow, I can't move the slides. So you can see that items 3 and 5, and these are the 2 that I actually showed you. 9 people got them wrong. So those ones. So if you were analyzing this with a teacher, you would focus on those, and you'd be like, okay, they got number 6. Everybody got number 6, but at number 4, some people had trouble with. But we really need to look at 3 and 5 and see what happened there. So we're going to focus on number 3, the one you read. This is the one you saw before. The right answer is fewer minors are being held in both juvenile and adult detention. And most people that got it wrong marked D. Juvenile offenders are thrown in adult prisons are likely to become career criminals. So looking at the question, what do you think happened here? What's your hypothesis about what happened? See, then yes. But I'll give you focus on the question. They chose a memorizing. They didn't understand all of the question. They did not fully read the question, but jumped to a conclusion. Jen is onto something there. Because if you look at the question is which sentence best summarizes the results of the study? So it's asking them to summarize the paragraph or the article. It's summarizing the results of the study. The study was basically saying fewer minors are being held in both juvenile and adult detention centers. One is a fact. Good point. This embedded in the article. Right, speaks to the final sentence, and it's sort of like the most punch, that sentence. It's the thing that really stands out to you, like, oh my gosh, we don't want to be making more career criminals. But that's not what the main results of the study are. That's a recommendation, an interpretation, and a recommendation. So maybe they needed to listen more carefully. In what we need to do next? What do we need to do with the assignment if it was basically that they didn't read the question carefully enough? What should we do? And if they understood the question, yeah, I think that's a very good chance of that. At a pretty high level, so maybe they just weren't focusing closely enough. Understanding the question, yes. So we're moving on now to look at the assignment. Are we going to redesign the assignment? Are we going to increase the rigor of the assignment? And based on the results, what would you say? Are they ready to move on? Not so right, because everybody missed a lot of it. So they could do some practice on focusing on specifics of the question. Any about where to go from here, what to do? Reading the reading, yes. It's a detail that was almost word for word instead of one that was summarizing. Good point. Think about this and not see the article at the same time. That way I could just have you download it from here. But anyway, let's go ahead. So we could provide more practice with summarizing. We could model them together before we have them do the independent practice. And then to move on, the standard lists a few things, not just summarizing, but also drawing inferences, drawing conclusions, and distinguishing fact from opinion. So there's plenty of more rigorous work ahead when we're ready to get to. And just in defense of Mike, actually what happened was he gave them the assignment without saying anything, and he got those results that we looked at. And then he the next focused on the assignment and talked about how to read this question carefully and all that, and they did like way much better. So it ended up having to do with focusing on the question. Okay, so we walked through all these steps. Introduce and determine the purpose assignment, and the teacher does that. Together, analyze the demands of the assignment. What do the students need to know and do? Then you look at the standard and see where that fits into the standards. If it doesn't fit, you go right to step 5 and redesign. If it's fit, then you go to diagnosing the student work, which is fun. You know, it would teach such an individual process, and to have somebody sit down with you and care how your students are doing, and really look at the work with you and brainstorm with you about what it means and where to go, what it means you should go from there. Once you have enough trust to really feel comfortable doing that, it's really quite a treat for a teacher, I think, to get to have several people focus on their students and their work. Okay, so quickly we'll go through another example. This one was lesson on proportions. So this teacher, Connie Marshall, was from Region 9. She taught a lesson on proportions, and then she gave a quiz. So the assignment is the quiz, and it has 4 problems on proportion. And the purpose of it is to check, see if the students have the ability to solve problems with proportion from real type of applications or word problems. Okay, so this is what the quiz looks like. Here's the instructions. First of all, set up a proportion for each question. Use labels to make sure the numbers are placed correctly. And then solve, and it's okay to use a calculator. So then we're focusing on question 3, and we're analyzing the demands of the assignment. So the question, finished 45 minutes of her workout. If there's 60% of her normal workout, how long does it take to finish her normal workout? Round the nearest minute. The answer is going to be in what? Minutes. So that's important. All right, so what do the students need to know, and what do they need to have? What do they need to do first to answer this question? Help me. What do they need? What are the skills here? They need the proportion formula, right? A proportion equation. Change identify components exactly, set up a proportion, and label exactly. Part. Good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so for skill, set up, label, solve is another skill they have to have, solve the problem, and use a calculator if they're using a calculator to do it. About the concepts are said and an unknown, because they're solving for an unknown, right? So they're setting up the equation with an unknown in it. Next is word. You probably have a better answer to that one than me for the context. Okay, so we know what the assignment is. We know what the students need to be able to do. Are we to a standard here? Look at these standards as you did before and tell me A, B, or C. I see C, B, C. Okay, so a lot of B's, but not in agreement. So is good, B and C, C, C. Okay, so I really want to say that there's not just one right answer here. It could be any of these, really. It depends on partly maybe on what level your students are, and partly on and it just like these standards overlap, and you can definitely be doing more than one standard in a lesson. The first one is from the introduction. It's so sort of like this overarching benchmark. So using a problem model that incorporates analysis and gives information. Yes, you are doing that. Determining a solution, justifying the solution. You are teaching that problem solving methodology with a particular kind of problem. So you could include that. B, you generate expressions and equations to solve problems. That's true too, and you're using multiplication and division, so that's true. And C is probably the best fit because it's talking about proportionality and proportional relationships. So I picked C also, but I think any of these or all of these could fit. Okay, we're up to the same place again. We know what the assignment is. We know what they need to do. We know we're connected to standards. We're definitely in the ballpark of the standards. So not which is skip analyzing the student work. So let's go ahead and look at the student work now. Of these 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 students, here's how many got it wrong. And these 0.5s, and this was not Connie, this was me grading the papers, so my interpretation of it. So if they got the wrong answer, it's wrong. If they got the right answer but they didn't label it, or it was labeled to percent and it was really minutes or something like that, I gave them half the credit. So that's why all those halves are in there. But basically, question 3 and question 4 were the ones that were a challenge. And we focused on question 3. So there was something else I was going to tell you about this, which is the students on the above this dark line, the 7 students in the top were there for the lesson. The 4 students in the bottom took the quiz the next day, and they were absent for the day of the lesson. So they missed a lot more because basically they didn't know what they were doing. So that's right. Okay, here's the question. Answer key. Thank you, Connie, for providing me with an answer key because I definitely needed that. So the equation, she has the unknown, she has everything labeled, the numerators and the denominators labeled. So she's out with this, and it ends up being 75 minutes. So that we're looking at 75 minutes. And then one person argued with her that it could be interpreted differently, so she gave credit for 30 minutes, but don't worry about that because I'm not going to show any of those. Okay, so here's some student work. So then a couple of people got 27 minutes. What happened? What did they do? That you're going to be sitting and doing with your teachers. How did they get 27 minutes instead of 75 minutes? Components in the wrong place. They didn't set it up correctly. Seems upside. They did it up correctly. And what could they have done to help themselves set it up better? There's some things missing here. Let's look at one. Labels, yes. They don't have percent signs. They don't have labels. Unknown is missing. Right. So they're taking, so answer key is the cross multiplying is really a shortcut from doing the whole long process You don't have to do every time, but you have to understand what it is in order to set everything up correctly. So not doing that, and they're even set up at all, really. I mean, neither one of these is really set up with all the numbers and with the unknown and stuff. Here's another one. This one, he's doing the equals in the he comes at 72 minutes, which is close but not the right answer. But what did he do? He did the same thing the other ones did. He multiplied straight across instead of cross multiplying in 27, and then that to the 45 minutes. Where did that come from? Oh yeah, she did 45 minutes. So he thought, see what this is how I interpret this person's thinking. Here she was thinking, okay, 27 minutes. That can't be right because she already did 45 minutes, so it's got to be longer than 45. So he added those 45 minutes on and got 72 minutes. So that was good logical thinking, but not good calculating. And 1 hour 20 minutes. Close, but yes, that person still didn't label. That's right, Janet. 60% of 45 instead of finding the unknown. That's right. So this person that got an hour and 20 minutes, what did they do? How did they get that? Right? If they don't put down their work and label it, then we have no idea what they're thinking. So it's really hard to diagnose what happened if you can't see what they did. So the teacher, why did the students miss the question? What skills do they need to work on? How will you teach those skills? That's what the real focus of the conversation is going to be. Everything else is kind of leading up to this, right? I'm sure, especially you math teachers, as you're looking at this and thinking about this, you know right away what you would do to reteach or to redo the problems, have them redo the problems with labeling or whatever. But you certainly want to focus on the process and have people show their work in order to, it's just for you to see what they're thinking, but for them to see what they're thinking, to get in the habit of mind of thinking about setting it up correctly so that they can, so they'll get to the answer. There's a book called Building a Better Teacher that incorporates figuring out where a student got off track to come up with the wrong answer. Thanks, Janet. That's great. That's what we need. We're trying to build a better teacher here. Labeling, we already talked about that. Using a variable in the equation and equal signs and all that. All those things are important. It's part of the language of math that you're teaching your brain to think in that language. Even with using a calculator, so that person that came up with an hour and 20 minutes, maybe they did something on the calculator that got them there, but we don't know what that something was. And since it wasn't the right answer, we would like to know what the thinking was. And using common sense. So, for example, that 27 can't be the right answer. If we're looking at 60%, the answer has to be 50 minutes is 60%. Obviously, the answer has to be more than 45 minutes, quite a bit more than 45 minutes. So they're all things that you could talk about with the teacher and then go back and revisit in teaching. And you would redesign the assignment together. She would maybe teach it again on a different day, give the same quiz maybe, bring the results back and see if better results from teaching more specifically. Process. Now is our opportunity to revisit the things, the behaviors that were the lowest rated. So how this process would really help you probe for specificity, clarity, elaboration, and precision, because you're really looking at something that's so specific. So talking about that specific thing really helps you focus in. It's not just like a very big general overall. Nice lesson. I like the way your students were engaged. Or nice lesson, but your students were all on their cell phone the whole time or something like that. It's very specific about what's taught and what the results are. It helps with establishing goals because your goal is direct to the assignment. So it's really clear what the goal is, and you'll know the next time you meet with them if they reached the goal or they didn't reach the goal. And then asking open-ended questions and eliciting thinking. I think that this process really lends itself to that. I don't know how much it lends itself to checking assumptions. So that's when you have to build in yourself to make sure that what you're assuming, maybe it's even what you're assuming that the teacher understands. You need to check that. I know for me, I had somebody help me with this assignment because I haven't taught math in a long, long time, and I didn't really want to tell that person how much I didn't understand about proportions. So you have to check that sometimes. Questions, comments, or thoughts about this process? You do not have an assignment to do this by the next webinar or at all, really, but I really love it if you do it, if you would post something in this piece and share it with others, because I think it's really an interesting process, and I'd be curious to know how it goes for you and if there's things that you run up against. So no questions or comments. If you think of some, of course, you can email me or you can put them in the COP, and that would be great. So what's coming next? The next thing we're going to do is really we're coming into the home stretch of this project of content standards implementation. So we had 3 face-to-face trainings. This is the 6th webinar that's been associated with those. What we have left is the 3 follow-up webinars. So those are really, I really like those to be as useful for you as they can be. Janet, thank you. Glad that you feel it's specific and practical. So think about what you'd like to have. What would you like to have more support or help with, or more modeling with, or more materials for, or whatever it is? We're going to post an interest survey, hopefully by Monday. I'm not guaranteeing that, but early next week. And if you can get that done by March 9th, really help, because that will give us 2 weeks to plan for the webinars, the first follow-up webinar, which is on March 21st and 23rd. So I need a little bit of lead time, so that's why I need you to answer this by next Friday, okay? So I don't have the link for you right now, but it will be emailed to you, and it will be posted in the COP. Jen, clarifying question. In this activity, do we focus only on the assignment and not at the lesson plan? Yes, correct. This activity is focused on the assignment, the student assignment. So this assignment is probably part of a lesson plan, so you could go back and look at the lesson plan, and you probably need to if you need to really redesign the assignment. But this really just focused on the student work. So the idea of it is the students are going to only really learn what to practice to be able to do. So the assignment, I think I looked at an example in one of the trainings where the teacher was teaching one thing, but he gave an assignment that really wasn't all that related to what he was teaching. It didn't demonstrate whether they learned it or not. So you're going to find that sometimes probably, that we think of a cool assignment and we give the assignment, but it's not really related to the lesson. So this is really very specifically focused on the assignment. Okay, I'm going to... Maybe the student doesn't see the lesson plan. Well, it doesn't mean you can't talk about the lesson plan, but the focus of it is on looking at student work and what can you learn from that. Don't actually need to set up a plan for teaching all standards in the course of a school year. You do, and that's why you have a curriculum that's done the standards. And if that curriculum's in place and it's it's in the course that you're teaching over the course of the year, then all those standards will be taught. mean, Janet? Okay. Okay, so for that link to the interest survey, please just click it and do it. It's not going to take you very long. It's going to mostly yes or no questions. Like there's going to be a list of things that we could address in the webinars, and you could just say yes or no, and it's anonymous, so you're not going to hurt my feelings. You're not going to personally hurt my feelings. You might hurt my feelings as a group, but who cares? We all did the gap analysis, and then we talked in February about how to fill those gaps. And so the goal is to have curriculum developed by July 1 that fills those gaps so that we are able to cover all those things. And if you don't totally make it, have it all together by July 1st, I don't think that but that's the goal. Okay, so the dates, you've seen these before and you have them in your handout. You have them on handout 11 from February. And handouts are posted. So actually one of these times might have changed though. The March 21st time changed to 2:30. So just make a note of that if you're a Thursday person. But you got all Friday people. So your time hasn't changed. Your times and dates haven't changed. That's the Thank you so much. Have a fabulous weekend, and I'll see you online. Thank you.
Marianne, we appreciate all that you've done and all the hard work of our coaches. And we'll leave the room open for just a few more minutes, and I hope everybody has a nice weekend.
Thank you, Claudette. Thank you, everybody. I saw that you made it home. Yay. Hopefully you're not doing all that work by yourself. There should be content area people that are working on the different content areas at least. Okay, so you're doing ESL. ESL standards seem overwhelming. Just start the piece of it, and it'll get there. It doesn't have to all be done tomorrow. Everyone, I'm at Texas time, so I have to go on to my next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Bye-bye.
All right, I'm going to close the room. Thank you, everybody.